Oh, now Tracy, you're on, and Todd's on.
Switch my name.
Ah,
Looks like we are just waiting for Kristen Runge.
you said Brian's not going to make it tonight, right?
Correct.
Are we ready to roll, Tracy?
Kristen Runge should be joining us, but it is 5:30, so if you would like to start, we can begin.
Let's begin. If
Okay.
you're ready, do you want to read anything or do you need to read anything or can I just get started?
I think we're old pros at this. You want to just get started?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. Let's call our village, or sorry, not our village board, our village plan commission meeting to order for December 14, 2020. Roll call, please.
Chris Zellner,
Here.
Bill Willems,
Here.
Kristen Runge, Brad Zeman,
Here.
Brian Malish, Chris Thomas,
Here.
Brian Wallace.
Here. Okay, first item we have on the agenda for this evening is our minutes from last meeting. I'd look for a motion if nobody has any changes that need to be made.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Brad Zeman, second by Brian Wallace. Any other comments? Raise your hand. Seeing none, call the question. Tracy, roll call vote, please.
Chris Zellner,
Yes.
Brian Wallace,
Yes.
Chris Thomas,
Yes.
Bill Willems,
Yes.
Brad Zeman.
Yes.
Minutes are approved.
Okay, next we have our public comment section. So if anybody would like to make any comments for any items that are on or off the agenda this evening, please raise your hand and Tracy will let you in.
Looks like we have 14 attendees. I have no hands raised.
Okay, then we'll move on to our first item, which is public hearing and discussion action on request by Kramer Development LLC for SIP revision and conditional use permit for addition of drive-through for previously approved building 1 site. So we'll take some information on it first, and then we'll open up our public hearing after that. So who's introducing here? Kevin, are you?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Sure. Just as introduction, you can hold the public hearing. It's the conditional use in the public hearing is for the drive-through. And we did have, we discussed it at tech staff. I think the only thing that we did raise any concerns about was that as you enter this particular drive-through, there's no escape route. So, but I think the applicant has explained to us that he's got good reasons on why that he hasn't provided an escape route. And I think you can go through that as part of his presentation. I think that's the only staff level that was really raised. And I think we were satisfied with the answer that we received. So that, Chris, if you want to hear from the applicant first before the public hearing, that'd probably be appropriate. Or if you want to hear from him after, that's fine too.
Nope, we'll take the applicant first.
Kevin, I don't see that Jeff Kramer is on.
I don't either.
Okay, do you want to give maybe a little more background, Kevin, from him that he would probably be giving?
Sure. Let me see if I can bring up.
It's more for the public because we've seen most of this already and heard about it. So,
Yep, let me share my screen. See it okay?
yes.
So this is for proposed lot number 1. It's the SIP. So it's really the site plan that goes along with this, as well as the drive-through. The drive-through is down here on the lower, I guess, up along County Country Q. but then circulates back towards that building. What this portion that's in the middle here is actually open space, and actually it's a space where Waunakee Utilities thinks they're going to put a utility box in order to provide the power for the site. And I think from Jeff Kramer's perspective is that before somebody would enter into this drive-through, they'd be able to see if they'd be able to, if they'd be backed up or not. So that's why he was thinking that he didn't necessarily need the escape route. The lot one, you've already taken a look at, and I think you've been fairly supportive of this particular building. It meets the parking requirements. Architecturally, I think we're satisfied with it. So really, the public hearing tonight is just for the drive-through. So with that, Chris, and maybe I'll send Jeff a note while we're on here. I'll send him a quick text so we can certainly open the public hearing.
Okay, then we will, let's see if I can shrink here for a second. There, so it is 5:35, so I'm going to open up the public hearing for anyone who'd like to make any comments with regards to the drive-through and this proposal. So if you have one, please raise your hand and Tracy will let you in.
I now have 18 attendees and I have no hands raised. I have one phone caller. I do not recognize the number. I suppose that might be Jeff, but I'm not sure if that listener knows how to raise their hand or
No,
not.
that's Kristen, if you can let her in.
Oh, that's Kristen. Gotcha.
All right, Jeff thought the meeting was at 6, so I think he'll be joining us shortly.
Hi, this is Kristen. Can you hear me?
We can, Kristen. Thank you for voicing up. So we know you're here now. I won't be able to see you. So if you have any comments to make sure that you put your hand up or just speak out, please.
Sounds good. I'm going to put my mic on mute now.
Thank you.
Chris, I have one hand raised.
Okay, go ahead.
There's a Tim Minson.
Go ahead, Tim. Go ahead, Tim.
Looks like he dropped.
Yeah, yep. I now have Brian Sweeney with his hand up, but that is not for his item. And he just put it down. Nope, it's still up.
Brian, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
Brian Sweeney, we are on Kramer. We are not on the Cohen Esri right now. Did you still wish to speak?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
It was from our team and incorrectly raised his hand, so, all right.
Okay. So I'm going to mute Brian Sweeney, and I show no other hands lowered or raised, I mean.
Okay, Kevin, how do you want to handle Brian Kleinmeyer? What's appropriate right now?
Well, I think I just heard Brian Sweeney say that the individual who had raised his hand for this item, I think was on the team for Cohen Esri and maybe did not necessarily have a comment on this item. Is that correct, Brian? Tracy, I think you need to unmute him.
That's correct, Brian.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that.
So Brian, would it be appropriate for us to reorder and come back to this?
Well, I mean, I guess it would, for purposes of wanting to be able to hear Mr. Kramer, if he has any comments that he needs to make.
Yes, before we would make any kind of thing, or would that?
I think if you want to, you certainly can. There's nothing that prevents you from doing that. To basically say, we're going to table this item right now and we'll come back to it when Mr. Kramer is on the Zoom site.
Do we have any objections from any board members to table this till he can get on? Please raise your hand if you object, otherwise we'll move on to the next. Brian, I need to close the public hearing too. So
Correct.
So I'm going to close the public hearing at this time, but we will have another opportunity after we have our speaker come in. So, okay, sounds good. We're going to move on to number 2 then. So the next item we have public hearing and discussion action on site plan, certified survey map, and conditional use permit for the Cohen multifamily project at 701 West Main Street. Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple of comments before you hear from the applicant. Because there's commercial and there's residential, the residential actually requires a conditional use permit. So the action that you're going to be holding a public hearing on the proposed residential that goes along with this project. And we got a couple other items that I want to talk to you about after you hear from the applicant in terms of how you want to proceed tonight, because we've had, there's a request out there for some financial assistance by the village. And with Brian and I discussing this, we don't think it's necessarily appropriate for the planning commission to take action until after that it's run its process. So that's something that Brian and I can touch on after Brian and his team make the presentation. So with that, why don't we hear from the applicant, and then you can hold the public hearing, and then Brian and I can follow it up with some staff comments.
Okay, so that would be Ryan Sweeney coming in, correct?
Yes, thank you very much. Tracy, I'm wondering if you could let in Brent Shipper,
Yes,
our architect.
done.
Great, and Ryan as well.
Ryan. I don't see a Ryan.
Okay, then Brent will take the lead on it. So we've spent the last.
Ask Studio, would that be Ryan?
Yes, correct.
Okay,
Correct.
there you go. Sorry.
Thank you. Just a quick review of our project. On April 28th, we received a low-income housing tax credit award from WHEDA, the Wisconsin Housing Economic Development Authority, for 701 West Main Street. And we met with staff and consultants throughout the summer, and there were several issues. You know, the larger one basically was the concern that 50 units on the 1.78 acres at 701 West Main Street was just trying to put too much on too small a space. So the staff and consultants suggested we see if we could get site control of 705 West Main Street, which we have done, and which added some significant costs to the project. So we are, the bulk of the discussion in the last 2 weeks with staff and consultants surrounded the design, the site plan, and improving the look and feel of that product. So I'm going to turn it over to Brent right now, and Ryan, and as he can lay out kind of some of the current status and the changes we have made in the design.
Tracy, are you able to give Ask Studio controls so that we could show drawings? Is that possible?
He should be allowed to as a panelist.
Okay.
Is it not letting you?
Yep.
Okay.
So, Ryan, do we have a site plan that we can start with? First off, we just wanted to show everyone the configuration of how the building will sit on the site. The multifamily building is 50 units. It has 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units in the building. All the 3 bedroom units are on the ground floor with ground floor entries, which is part of the WHEDA requirements. What you're seeing right now is a site plan that we have worked out with the requirements of CARP C in the wetlands. Just in the last week, we got information back that we would have to maintain a distance off the wetlands, and this particular site layout, the reason that it looks as unique as it does with the parking in the back is that we have a wetlands area in the back that we are needing to keep any pavement 75 feet off that wetlands line and 30 feet away from that wetlands line for any excavation. So again, the building now sits on the two sites, and we have the parking in the back. The building not only consists of 50 units of multifamily housing, but it also has a component of retail component, a commercial component on the ground floor also, which faces Main Street. So if we go to the other parts of the site plan, just so everyone knows, is you have the building, you have parking, you have a play area behind the building, and then we have a water retention area for our water runoff off the parking lot. So if we go to the elevations. We have proposed two sets of elevations to the village. What you see on the two lower images are the two different ways of handling the Main Street facade. The changes between them are really budget driven. The proposed south elevation is a combination of brick and cement board siding with some storefront, aluminum storefront at the retail and the building offices area. With some additional funds, and this is what pertains to the TIF, is with additional funds, there is a look at adding balconies to the front, adding more brick detail to the brick areas, and also putting some lighting on the front. But overall, what we've done on the front facade, on the Main Street facade, was to make sure that we were breaking the facade down into a rhythm that was smaller in scale and allowed the 50 units to each have some individual character about their units. On the rear side, or the north side, the side that is towards the wetlands, are two different schemes here proposed and with added funds. Again, what we're doing with an added fund scheme is we are putting balconies on the rear and adding some more fenestration and actually adding some more changes to the roof line. We've talked with staff a few times about the look of the building. We've talked a lot about, even though there is a difference between the front and the back of the building, that it was very important that when people viewed it from the back, that they still saw it as something, as a place they'd want to live. When they come out of Piggly Wiggly and they see the back of the building, that it's still something that everyone can be proud of. And we spent quite a bit of time on trying to do that. You probably all do know that this is a low-income housing tax credit project. So our budget is very tight, and it is one of the reasons that we've had some back and forth about how to make it the best looking building we can. But in the end, on the added funds elevation, we also added brick on the backside. there is a dark colored brick on the back side rather than the terracotta colored brick that's on the front side. But the idea of the brick wraps around, and all the public entrances to the building have brick on them. The ends of the building, these are the biggest facades, but I think it's important that everyone sees what the ends of the building are. Again, we tried to break down the scale of the building. Some of the things that we did that I'm very proud of is that we use different windows and different configurations, so that again, it was not, you did not see a consistent rhythm through the building, because we wanted it to show that there were individual living units within. And then if we look at the models of how the building would appear as you come in and go out of the village, so that everyone understands three-dimensionally what the building will look like. This is the view driving east, coming into the village. You can see the existing apartment building on our right, and to the left you see the smaller scale pieces of the new building, and it creates a nice gateway, we think, to the community and to the village. And I don't know why we have to be driving on the wrong side of the road to show you that picture, but and then going out of the village. So in this view, you're right at McDonald's parking lot, headed out, and you can see the scale of the project. It is 3 stories, and it does meet all the height requirements of the village. And one more image just to show a little bit more from the front, the different colors and the different textures that we plan to use, and how we announce the commercial space in the on the ground floor. And then if you go back one slide, Ryan, and show the materials. The material palette for the building is the different hardy plank siding, and then the brick, a burgundy brick and an ebonite brick on the back. So that's the palette in which we hope to use on the project. Any questions about the building or the site, how we intend to use it? Kevin, is that a good explanation? Is there anything else that you can think of that we should let everyone know about the project?
No, Brian, I think that's a good explanation.
Okay.
I do have, just for the Plan Commission members, we have Jason on the call, as well as Ed. Ed Freer helped with the architectural review. I think he gave us some pretty good feedback in terms of bringing out the architecture of the building, and he's available to answer questions. Chris, it's probably a good time to hold that public hearing, and then Brian and I can then give you a little more feedback on what we're expecting the Plan Commission to do tonight.
All right, thanks. So it is 5:53. I'm going to open our public hearing now for anybody in our attendees that would like to ask questions and or make comments. So please raise your hand if you have interest in speaking, and Tracy will let you in.
I see we have 18 attendees, and at this time there are no hands raised.
Okay, I'll give it 15 seconds, and if we don't have any hands up, then we're going to move on, but hopefully we'll have some comments. Boy, 15 seconds seems like a lot, doesn't it, when you're waiting? Anyhow, any hands at this point?
No, there are no hands raised.
Okay, so I'm going to close our public hearing then, and board or commission members, questions, please raise your hand and I will call on you. Kevin, you have a comment first?
Yeah, I think it'd be appropriate for you guys to hear from Ed. I think he was a big part of the architectural changes, and I think I'd like to hear from him.
Okay,
Ed, just so you know, they did get a copy of your memo that was forwarded on to them via email.
Super, thank you. Well, first of all, I think Brian Sweeney has done a great job of running a marathon. He has helped bring this project along, and it's a lot different than when I first saw it. I'm going to guess it was about 18 months ago. So I got re-engaged about a week and a half ago and was delighted. I want to compliment the architectural design team who really stepped that up and were great in terms of a collaborative discussion on how to make this better. I think a lot of people are concerned about flat roofs and the use of materials in more of a contemporary, restrained way compared to some of the older buildings in the middle of the village. And I think this is really a good addition to the front and gateway aspect from the west. It demonstrates that a housing project of even this limited budget can elevate the quality of the detailing and the design. And what the architects have managed to do is take a very long building, 50 units, and really help modulate both the vertical and the horizontal alignment. So the value of that is to break down the scale and the massing of a very long building that's housing 50 units. So you've got a series of vertical dimensions or horizontal dimensions that start emulating the scale and the texture of some of the older buildings that you'll find in the village. Then vertically, they've established a nice base to the building. And most of my positive comments I want to underscore are based on the solution that is requiring some additional financial help. So, and you can see the differences between the originally proposed and then the enhanced, and I like using the word the enhanced structure. So what you see when you see the enhanced structure, you clearly have stronger sense of the ground floor. You have a stronger sense of the individual entrances besides the retail facility. They've done a great job of wrapping the materials around. And we had a long discussion about the building needing to be perceived and used as a 360-degree building. And so there's a relationship with Main Street that they've established. And there's a relationship to the conservancy, the playground, and the grocery store. So depending on what side of the corridor you live on, you may be facing the north, but that's still perceived as your front door where you park your car and come into the building. So they've done a great job of letting this building have a character and an orientation that breaks down the scale of 50 units per these vertical modules, but also the north and the south side of the building. I think the materials are good materials. Again, they're using contemporary materials that have a more than reasonable life cycle. And they're also contributing towards energy concerns, the glazing, as well as the building materials. I just want to also point out when when Brent showed the three-dimensional image driving into the village, regardless of which lane you were in, it's interesting to see how a lot of people, especially the upper one, a lot of people have an objection to flat roofs, but when you see the ridged, I'm not sure if it's a hip or a simple gable roof across the street, look at how much more mass is added to that building because of all the structural required to hold up that roof. Whereas the left building has a much more diminished scale. So I think this is another successful technique that helps break down the scale of a very long building. Other than that, I think the important thing to underscore is that it's a better building. It's an attractive gateway. It has and again, looking at this building, you see the variety of the use of the materials and the undulating of the horizontal line, how much smaller in scale and relief it offers than the building on the south side. So I think they've achieved a lot of what was asked of them. And I'm very encouraged, and I hope that the commission and the village board can understand that this can be a residential project with a challenging budget, but it doesn't have to be a simple box. The last comment I want to make is that this building is going to influence other projects that come into town, and only with the hope that they will even improve and set a higher bar. So to shoot at a higher bar at this point is important. The other thing is that this side of town and towards the grocery store, who knows what the future development pressures or opportunities are going to bring. And so I think it's important that we show that the village and this project demonstrates that Waunakee wants a higher quality project, and those that follow need to understand that it's only going to get better. With that, I will be quiet.
Okay,
Did I leave anything out?
thanks, Ed. Okay, Kevin, anybody else you'd like to hear before I open it up to the Plan Commission members?
Yeah, I just want to give just a little bit more background in terms of why you have some choices here tonight in terms of the action you're going to take. At the staff level, we're certainly trying to encourage that one of our first affordable housing projects or workforce housing projects, that it's comparable to market rate. And in order for them to do that, and we pushed them on the lot size, which was a great addition, is them to acquire the land that was next to it. So it now fits much better on the lot. It's not a force fit. And you may recall there was some underground parking in some of their earlier revisions to this. And, they've shared with us that their budget just won't allow to do covered or underground parking. And they had to step up to the plate and acquire that additional land. And they, they're going to need financial assistance to do that. At least that's what we've been told. I can tell you that at least those of us that are just staffing this for the Plan Commission haven't seen the numbers. So that's got to be vetted by the CBA and by the village board in terms of, what can they afford and the but-for test and all those other things that go along with that. We at the staff level for the Plan Commission, we're really just pushing for options, and certainly are very supportive of putting some more financial assistance in this project to get it as comparable to market rate apartments as you can. So with that, I think Brian can give you a couple of different options on what you want to do tonight. But first, it's probably better to take some questions from the Plan Commission.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to go around the board and ask if you guys have any questions with this one. So I'm going to start with Kristen since she's on the phone and see if she has any questions right now or comments.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
That one's an easy start. All right, Brad Zeman.
It is a long building, and they did their best to break it up. As you know, I have LIHTC developments myself, so I get the struggles and pains of putting up good housing. The landscaping plan in front, I'm just looking at this picture off the highway. Are they putting up some plantings in there or something just to kind of move the eye a little bit from the long building? And then I noticed there's one little canopy down there. Anything else that you could do to just break up the long entranceway into town?
On this particular view that you're looking at, we were just showing the building and we weren't showing the landscaping. And yes, we do have landscaping scheduled for the front of the building also. And there are actually 3 canopies along the front. There are some canopies at the individual apartments, and then there's canopies at the commercial entry. So there's actually a rhythm of 2 small and 1 large canopy along that front.
Thank you.
Chris Thomas.
Can you go over the parking a little bit more? I think I saw somewhere that staff is recommending 95 spots. Is that how many are in there right now?
Yes, there's 95 spots shown on the parking layout that you're looking at here. If we needed to go to a full 106 stalls, the idea would be that we would push the parking more into where we reserve the space for the playground. But what you see here with the 96, it gives us plenty of space for a playground, and it allows us to keep our 75 feet back from the wetlands line.
And then how does the entrance and exit work? Is it just one entrance and exit from Main Street?
Yes, it's one entry and one exit, and with the ability to go around. So as far as how we would handle fire trucks, we have our front street access for fire trucks, and then we have a maneuverable parking lot to get fire trucks through also.
Okay, and then like plowing of snow, how would that work in this parking lot?
We've got a few different options for snow. One of the things is that we have these island areas that we can stack snow, and we also have a push-off area in the back. So we believe, and then we also have push-off area towards the playground too during the winter. So we've got push-off areas that we've thought of.
Okay, no more questions from me at this time.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Phil Willems? Phil, you're muted. There you go.
Why any commercial space at all? Seems to me that that's not going to work way out there. It just doesn't seem to make sense to have any commercial space in this at all.
That's a requirement of the zoning was to have the commercial space.
If it doesn't rent, are we going to give them an option to change it to residential?
Jason?
Brian's got his hand up. I'll defer to Brian's hand.
I was just going to say, you have to have commercial in this district. So there has to be some commercial associated with the development based on the zoning district that it is and the language in our zoning code.
And
But,
to answer the question.
Go ahead, Jason. I was just going to add that, that's not going to stop us from making changes in the future, though, Phil. If we decide as a community that commercial is just not appropriate out here, we can make some changes in order to accommodate that. But in order for them to stay within our rules that are currently set, so we're not changing rules for this development, they have to have the commercial. But that wouldn't stop us from some point in the future to say that's not an appropriate place for commercial, and they come back here, and that we do need to revise our rules, and there may be some good reasons for that. But rather than change the rules as part of this process, they wanted to live within the rules. And just adding on to the parking, we're holding them to the standard that we've held the last multifamily projects. And it's really based on that Middleton model, which just does give an exception to the parking standards that we have. And you will be seeing some parking standard changes coming shortly within the next at least 3 to 6 months, and really adopting those changes that mirror somewhat anyway with the city of Middleton standards. Jason, anything more to add on that?
No, you covered it. Thanks.
Okay, I can live with that, but for the future, if it doesn't work out, I would be happy to listen to a change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian Wallace?
Kind of echo Phil and Chris's comments on the parking. I think if I saw that correctly, we were looking at 1.5 as a number on this particular one. And one of the questions I would have, there was 50 units, right?
Right.
Okay, so you had 96 parking stalls, so you're just under 2 per unit. Are we assuming or estimating that that's enough for any commercial that might get leased, that there's enough parking there for that commercial entity then?
Yes, the part of parking calculation does include the square footage of the commercial also. So that 96 figures the units and the commercial space.
And how many 3-unit or 3-bedroom units are there?
I believe
Or
there's
can you
8.
can you break down just the 3, 2, and 1-bedroom units?
I think we have that outlined on the drawing somewhere. There's 8 3-bedrooms.
It's 8 3-bedrooms, 20 2-bedrooms, and 22 1-bedrooms.
Thanks, Ryan.
Okay. What is Kevin? You mentioned market rate. Do we have a value on what that means?
One more time, Brian. I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, you mentioned market rate units, okay, as part of the rental on these market rate. Do we know what market rate is, or it's? I mean, I'm assuming it's ever changing, but do we know, like today, what market rate means, and how does that compare to some of the other developments that have had apartment complexes like on Main Street or out at off in Kilkenny there?
Because of the tax credits, Brian Sweeney should be able to answer that in terms of how many are market rate, how many are, and what percentage of the medium that these will allow for. Brian?
There are actually 10 market rate units within the 50-unit product. 10 of those units will be at 30% AMI. 20 of those units would be at 50% AMI, and 10 would be at 60% AMI, and again, plus the 10 market rate units. The market rate units for our building would go for $970 for a 1-bedroom and $1,240 for a 2-bedroom. So that is, I think, cheaper or less expensive than certainly the Hubby product, but it's probably closer to a traditional, non-luxury apartment like that, like the Hubdies.
Okay, and so then when you say 30% AMI, if you're saying, $1,000 a month on a 1-bedroom, so then you're saying is that 30% of that?
I'm not sure. Could you
You have here a 1-bedroom at market rate of $970. So if we have 10 units at 30 AMI, what does that equate then?
So for 1-bedroom, the range from 30 to 60 are the following. For 1-bedroom, it would be $482 to $873 for a 1-bedroom.
Okay.
For a 2-bedroom, it'd be $578 to $1,116 for affordable 2-bedroom. And the 3-bedrooms would be at $1,187 per month.
All right. And Kevin, you mentioned about the parking that you were holding them to, or holding the development to the parking. Now, how does that relate to what was in the documents here about 1.5?
Yeah, that 1.5 is the standard.
That's what we're, okay. So the 95 or 96 that I counted here is where we're good with that at staff level.
Correct.
Okay. I'm assuming that's a garbage dumpster there by the playground.
Yes.
And we're comfortable with, you mentioned the fire trucks will have no problem getting around there. So I'm assuming you're comfortable with the garbage trucks getting around the site.
Yep.
Okay. No more questions.
Okay, I think I've got everybody with the exception of me. So a couple of questions out there, and ironically, my questions are different than everybody else's. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but parking that's been brought up. Do we have any issues with the one entry point onto the highway with where our stoplights are located and the speed coming through there? Will that all be readjusted, Kevin, or have we looked at that? I'm just thinking of those times where, you know, our rush hour times, morning and evening, and the amount of volume of traffic that's going to go into that one spot with the lights very close to it. So have we looked at that at this point?
We haven't. We have not done the traffic impact study. I can't imagine that it's far enough away from that McDonald's. It's not going to conflict with that signalized intersection.
Again, I'm just thinking of the one entry point
I know.
coming out onto the highway with the speed of that spot, and making sure that we're keeping that a safe zone for everybody, not just the residents there, but everyone else too. So that's one thing I'd like to make sure we look at.
Gotcha. And it's not our jurisdiction, it's DOT's jurisdiction. And so, you know, they did have an access point there, so they would be entitled to it. Yeah, I guess that's something I haven't, you know, it's a good question. And I'd like to take some time to really evaluate that question. It might be that, you know, the safest maneuver might be a right out, you know, during certain time periods. Because, you know, going across that cross traffic might be challenging.
For those, that would be challenging. Yeah, I think it'd be challenging for people if they want to go east, that they're going to have a right out only. I think that would, I mean, I wouldn't care for that if I was moving in, that I wouldn't have access to go into the community, technically.
Yeah, I know you'd have to circle around, you know, like on Holiday Drive or, you know, the next one down.
Not Holiday, it would have to go all the way to Dorn.
To, you're right.
Yeah, we only have one spot down there for that. So I just want to make sure we have that covered before we go, you know, anywhere. Second, as far as the building goes, this is my personal opinion, the dark color that's in the building, I'm just not a fan of that. It doesn't match that area in any way, shape, or form. So Ed's comments about it does have a different look with the flat roof compared to what's across the street, but the particular dark color doesn't match anything that we have in that area. So it would be unique to that spot. I would, if we're going to have that, I wouldn't want that on the end as the first thing you're seeing from the end, one side, just my opinion. I don't know how everybody else was feeling about that, but to me, that was, it just jumped out at me right away as something that, I don't know if I like that look. Next question is for Brian Sweeney. With regards to this, do you have, or in any of your other buildings that you have, one of the concerns that, you know, always creeps in is when you have out of town owners of buildings and the upkeep of those buildings. Do you have a fund set aside for the maintenance of this specific right off the bat that's there? Or is there some way that we could enter into an agreement that there is going to be a maintenance fund that's kept for this?
Sure. So Cohen Esri Development Group owns and manages 10,000 units in 15 states. And we put these budgets together all the time, and we always have a reserve as part of it. And, you know, particularly when you get into the 15, 16, 17 year, you know, you have a need to maybe give it you know, an upgrade, etc. So, my trusty staff in my ear is saying replacement reserve is 325 per unit per year. So it is something we deal with all the time to make sure that you know, there is the reserve to keep for the upkeep, etc. And it's a requirement of WIDA.
So where I'm going with that and why it's important to me is that is a gateway to the community. As you know, the wetlands are right next to you. There's really not going to be more than likely any development to the west of that on the road. So the upkeep to that's going to be very important, in my opinion, to our community. And that's why I'm asking that question of you, to make sure that you understand the importance of that. We have other corridors in our community that we've really made sure that the developer understood that we are going to keep a certain standard on those gateways. And I just want to make sure we're clear with that and have an understanding. So I don't know if that number is an appropriate number, and I think staff is going to have to help me with that. Brad, you can probably help with that a lot since you've done a lot of these projects yourself, in understanding that. So that's a concern of mine. And it doesn't matter if it was you or anyone else, I would have that same concern as a focal point coming in, knowing it's always going to be the first thing people see moving forward until it's completely demoed, if that were the case. But so that's something that's important. Other than that, those are the three other questions I had outside of the others. All right, I'll give one more round for everybody. If you have any other things you want to add or questions since everybody else talked, please raise your hand. And if I see anyone else, we can go from there. And then others will move on to Brian and to him give us some advice here. Anyone else? Kristen, I'll ask you since I can't see you.
No other questions for me.
Okay, thank you. Brian Clymer.
So you have three items before you tonight, the certified survey map, the conditional use permit, and the site plan. You know, there's actually more alternatives that are identified in the staff memo. We just didn't want to make it 8 pages long. I'm going to give for you, I guess, kind of a soft recommendation, but you can definitely go in a different direction. And my thought is this. I think you can approve, I mean, if you're inclined to approve the conditional use permit and you're okay with the multifamily being located on this property, I think you can go ahead and just act on the conditional use permit today. It is on pages, let me just, I'm trying to find it, I apologize. 41 and 42 of your packets. And if you look at at least the proposed conditions within the documents, they all require that a land division, it requires a land division be made. It requires that the development be consistent with the site plan that you approve. And it requires the development to comply with all applicable federal, state, and local statutes, regulations, et cetera. So I think you're covered, and you don't, you know, whether or not a TIF assistance is provided at all for this, I don't think is going to impact the approval of the conditional use permit. So I think that you can probably go ahead and act on the conditional use permit if you want to tonight. And so I don't know if you want me to stop there and see if you have any questions, Chris, on that, or if you want me to continue.
Commission members, any questions on that? Brian Wallace?
So enlighten me, if we are approving a conditional use permit, and I defer to what Phil had talked about as far as the retail space in there. Is it not in our jurisdiction here to eliminate or at least request the elimination of the retail space? Because I look at up and down Main Street and County Highway Q with the retail space that we have available sitting empty as it is, to add more retail space to this location. I'm curious why, if it's a conditional use permit, that can't become part of the conditions.
Because it's the C1 district, and we have to have some level of commercial based on the language in our zoning code. And you really don't have the ability to pull the commercial out because that would be in conflict with our zoning code. I do believe that we had meetings with the developer on this issue when we looked at some other zoning districts within the village, but this zoning district actually was the best fit for what they wanted to do at a multifamily level. So no, we can't pull, you can't, as part of the conditional use permit, pull the commercial out of this.
Okay.
Others with questions? So does anyone see any issues with what Brian has suggested? Tracy, did you just speak? Or Kristen?
No, this is Kristen. Yeah, Kristen, just that's me. Yes. So with commercial, I most often my mind goes to like retail or a Jimmy John's or something. But could we be thinking like that might be a daycare space or more of a service or family supporting retail or commercial space, an office?
Well, yeah. I mean, essentially, with the, so this property is in the C1 zoning district, and I'm trying to pull that up right now. I mean, there is a laundry list of commercial uses that are permitted within the C1 district. I actually think, Kristen, that every single use that you just said, with potentially the exception of the daycare, is a probably a permitted use. I mean, it looks to me like we got 26, probably close to 50 specifically identified permitted uses that the commercial aspect of this development could be used for.
And
Thank
if I
you.
could, I
Oh.
would add that I understood Kristen's question in part to be what's viable here. And I think that's what's maybe on other people's minds too. So we're talking about a 1,200 square foot space. Yeah, daycare would be allowed, but probably not a fit in 1,200 square feet. I'd say there's a variety of smaller scale retail or service businesses that 1,200 square feet could accommodate.
Kristen, I think you pointed out a couple of good uses that would be appropriate there. Somebody that wants high visibility, but doesn't need a lot of access. The Edward Jones, a tax preparer, somebody that wants to really have that presence, but doesn't necessarily get the excessive drive up traffic to it.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks, Kristen. Any other comments? Raise your hands. Okay, so Brian's recommendation for approval potential for tonight. Brian, why don't you repeat that for everybody?
I'm sorry. Yeah. So I mean, basically what we've talked about thus far is just the conditional use permit, and that's on pages 41 and 42 of your packet. And if somebody's so inclined, they can make a motion to approve the conditional use permit, and if it's seconded and you approve it, you're done. And I don't think that you need to do anything further on that. Similarly, I think that you can, you have a certified survey map where you're making a recommendation to the village board that they approve it. And I know that there are some staff comments associated with the CSM. I think specifically certainly Strand and maybe Waunakee Utilities. The CSM is probably also something that's not going to get impacted by the potential for TIF assistance. And if you're inclined to make a recommendation to the village board that it approve the certified survey map, I think the motion would be motion to recommend approval of the certified survey map, subject to all staff comments resolved to the satisfaction of the village engineer. So I guess that's the CSM.
So I'll just ask this one question, Brian. So until we have a TIF agreement, wouldn't it make sense to have that in place so we really know what we're going to be doing and what they're going to be doing?
That's essentially what alternative one is. I mean, and really the site plan is the one that seems to be impacted by potentially by the TIF assistance request. And I mean, so certainly one of the alternatives is that, there's been a lot of feedback, I think, based on the questions that you asked, provided to the developer here. But one of the potential actions here is essentially to defer, because we want to see what's going to happen with the TIF request. I think it's on the agenda for the CDA tomorrow night. My understanding is it would be on the agenda, likely, depending on what the CDA does, at one of the village board meetings in January. And so I think that's a reasonable approach. The only thing I would say there is we have some rather restrictive language in our village code regarding how quickly we have to act on certified survey maps. And to the extent that it would be the Plan Commission's desire to wait to act tonight on all of these items until we know what's going on with the TIF assistance, we would need the developer to agree that it's okay that we delay action on the certified survey map. The other option is to take action on a couple of things tonight, but delay action on the site plan, because that's the one that's clearly seems to be most potentially impacted by the TIF assistance request.
Well, let me ask that to our developer and ask him what his feelings are on that. Brian, how do you feel about that? I mean, I'm assuming that the TIF is a big deal, and that, depending on what happens with that, is going to kind of see where we go moving forward. And that's just my thought right now. I don't know what the other board members are feeling at this point, other than what they've shared up to this point, I guess, in public. But what are your feelings?
It's always good to get approval of your product, but it does seem reasonable what Brian is suggesting, to go ahead with the conditional use permit and the CSM. And we'll have, more clarification by this week, probably at least a direction where the CDA, which is made up of most of the council, is that right?
No, the CDA has Kristen and myself is on the CDA.
Got it, that's right. And Chris maybe as well?
Myself and Kristen.
Oh, Chris, yes. Chris.
Yep.
Good. So I think Brian's suggestion is a reasonable one. You'd be okay with that?
Okay, so I'd look for that, a motion then to that effect if anybody's so inclined. Brian, you got your hand up. You can't make that motion.
To be clear, I mean, if we're going to move forward with, I think we would want 3 separate motions if this is the direction that the Plan Commission is going to go. One would be approval of the conditional use permit. One would be the recommendation on the certified survey map to the village board, again, subject to all staff comments being resolved to the satisfaction of the village engineer. And the third would be, it would probably make sense, since we voted on the other 2, to have a motion to table approval of the site plan until the Plan Commission has a better understanding of to what extent, if any, TIF assistance will be provided to the project.
Okay, so then the first one would be the conditional use permit. Why don't we just go through those one at a time and see if we have a motion? Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay, so do we have a motion for the CUP in this situation from someone? Okay, I see no one raising their hand for that one. Okay, I will make that motion to see if there's going to be a second for it.
I will second it. This is Kristen.
Okay, so
Sorry,
I made
could
the
not
motion.
get my phone here.
Kristen Runge seconded it. Do we have any other comments from anyone? Okay, then we will take our vote. That would be Tracy. Please take a roll call vote.
Bill Willems,
Yes.
Chris Thomas,
Yes.
Chris Zellner,
Yes.
Brad Zeman,
Yes.
Brian Wallace,
Yes.
Kristen Runge.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, then we have a motion for the CSM approval as presented. Do we have that motion by anyone this evening?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, motion by Phil Willems. Do we have a second? Second by Brian Wallace. Any other comments? I see one hand up and I don't really want to take the question, but I'm going to. It's from Brian Kleinmeyer. Go ahead, Brian.
I just want to confirm that this includes the subject to all staff comments being resolved to the satisfaction of the village engineer.
I might have been mumbling when I said that.
Okay, so that I'm assuming, Phil, that you're saying yes, it does include that.
Yes.
And our second from Brian Wallace, are you in agreement with that? Okay. Brian Kleinmeyer, is your hand down now? Okay, it's good. He actually left the screen. So I see no other comments. So roll call vote, please, Tracy.
Kristen Runge,
Yes.
Brian Wallace,
Yes.
Brad Zeman,
Yes.
Phil Willems,
Yes.
Chris Thomas,
Yes.
Chris Zellner.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. And then the final one would be to table our site plan until after we have TIF.
I'll make a motion to table that until we have further understanding on the TIF.
Okay, motion by Brian Wallace, second by Chris Thomas. Any other comment or discussion? Brian Wallace?
What is a general timeline on reviewing and going through the TIF assessment?
CDA tomorrow, and then the village board likely the first meeting in January.
For approval at that point?
Discussion. I don't know if they'll get to
Discussion at that
if they'll get close to it, and then possibly then that would put you in a position to take action the second Monday in January.
It could come to us as, okay, just curious on timeline. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, roll call vote, please, Tracy.
Chris Thomas,
Yes.
Bill Willems,
Yes.
Brian Wallace,
Yes.
Kristen Runge,
Yes.
Chris Zellner,
Yes.
Brad Zeman.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I think that's everything, Brian. Is that correct? For this one for tonight?
That is, yes.
Okay, Brian Sweeney, thank you to you and your team. Appreciate it. We'll be in touch. Thank you. Okay, then we're gonna go back to number 1 now. I think I saw that Jeff Kramer was here, which he is. So we're gonna go back to our number 1 on our list with our public hearing and discussion action. And we had an introduction already in regards to this. So we really want to go back and give you the opportunity to speak. So if you would, please go through with any comments that you have for tonight. Jeff Kramer. There he is.
Hello.
Good evening.
Sorry I missed you guys earlier. I had my calendar set for 6 o'clock.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
We spoke about this briefly last meeting, but we made a change to the site plan, particularly for building 1 on lot 1. We added a drive-through for the southernmost tenant there. And this came before you as a conditional use permit. Last time we were here, we talked about building 2 and some changes we made there. So if there's any specific questions, I'm happy to answer that. The drive-through was added for, we anticipate a food use going in on that south end of the building. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so before we ask you any questions, we didn't really do our public hearing because we were waiting on that. So I'm going to open the public hearing right now for anybody who would like to address us in regards to this.
Chris, we did hold the public hearing. We opened it.
I understand that, but I wanted to give the public an opportunity after
Okay.
Jeff had an opportunity. So,
All right.
so if you'd like to make a comment, this is your time. Looks like we have 15 attendees. And if not, that's okay too. Please raise your hand if you do.
I see no hands raised.
All right, I'm not going to go through the whole 15-second delay thing last time we did, but last call for anybody if you'd like to make a comment. All right, I didn't see any hands pop up myself. So, okay, so I'm going to close the public hearing. Commission members, any questions for Jeff? Please raise your hand. Everybody's still awake, right? You guys went quiet that last topic too. All right, good. Jeff, any concerns? Kevin talked to us about the single lane. There's not an escape lane. Do we have any real concerns about that?
I don't. I have one like this in Madison too. And in this case, it's actually pretty decent where you can see through that whole loading area. So it's your choice to go in or not. And then generally the folks that we're going to be working with are going to be pretty quick to serve. And I was explaining to Kevin and some of the consultants last week on a call that, you know, a lot of what they're doing now is they're ordering ahead on the app and then picking up food. So people are calling those a pickup window now rather than a drive-through primarily because of how the ordering has changed and probably will continue to be that way in the future. So I don't have any issues with that. I looked at most of them in Waunakee, most of the drive-throughs, and you know, there are escape lanes after you've already ordered, which is kind of a odd time to get out of the line. So I think in this case, given the visibility, it should work really well.
Okay, my only concern, do you know who your user is going to be? You don't have to say it if you do, but.
We're negotiating with a couple of different people, so I can't get into that yet.
That's fine. I think everybody has, at least I have the hesitancy when we saw what happened in Middleton when Sonic originally opened in University Avenue.
Oh, yeah.
So that's all I'm thinking is if it's going to be a high volume thing like that, if there's going to be a problem within your parking lot more than out on any street.
Right.
So because there's nowhere to escape, and I don't want cars not being able to back out, or nor do you. So
right.
if you feel that it's going to meet those needs, you know, I have to defer to you. I don't know who that user is going to be. That's the thing that scares me a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'd rather not have the Sonic where it's super busy and now it's been vacant for 2 years.
Yep.
So we'll have an approach there that I think will make sense. And you know, Hy-Vee has restrictions on this site too, so we can't do like a Starbucks as an example. So we've worked with them on a couple of tenants we're talking to, and they're your typical like, you know, fast casual restaurants. So I don't see it being a problem.
Okay. Okay, that was my only question. Other commission members, any questions? Or Brian, do you have one?
Yeah, my only, and I'll defer to Jeff on it, kind of what you said, Chris, is just the flow of traffic coming in and out of that drive-through area is the only concern I would have, and how that might be signed or marked, because it's just the way the lot is configured makes it a little bit more of a challenge getting in and out of there. Especially if you consider that it's full or the parking lot's full, and how they're going to navigate through the lot to get out of the site.
Sure. We had a comment from one of the consultants too about pavement markings, and I submitted a plan back last week that addressed landscaping and screening around the order board as well as the southern property line, and also that plan was showing pavement markings from the entry coming down that main drive, then around the loop, so people knew that that's the direction for the drive-through.
Okay. That's my only question or comment.
Kristen, did you have any comments?
No, those are my concerns too, just the ability to maneuver in the drive-through.
Okay, well, it doesn't sound like we're going to really have any maneuverability once you're in there, but if it's quick and free moving, people will know if there's a line there or not. If they don't want to be in it, they won't go. So, all right. So, do we have what's our options right now for tonight, Kevin? Are we looking to? I'm out of order right now with my stuff. So, our recommended motion is to recommend approval of SIP and CUP documents to the Joint Plan Commission, and with conditions that all staff comments are resolved to the satisfaction of village engineer. Any changes to that?
No.
Still recommended. Brian's got his hand up.
Well, the only thing I would say is, so on pages 8 and 9 of your packet is the draft conditional use permit. And right now there are, and Mr. Kramer just identified a couple of these. In the draft, there are 4 conditions. One is, and essentially all of them could be made, so they just have to be consistent with the site plan. One right now is just the operation of the drive-through. Another is the placement of the order board if one is necessary. Then there are also some comments regarding landscaping and pavement markings or directional signage in the comments that Kent and Jason provided. And, you know, to the extent that you want landscaping and the pavement markings and directional signage to be consistent with, you know, the site plan and any comments to the site plan, I think that you would just need to make that clear in your motion to the Joint Plan Commission.
Okay. I'll ask Jason, I guess. I always want to ask Jason to get his comments regards to this. Do you see any issues with what's being proposed, other than what we have to address, obviously, with what Brian just pointed out from staff?
My suggested conditions were with regard to the landscaping, as noted, in the placement of any order board, such that it not be in the front yard setback. So it's at least as far from the street as from Q as the building. That order board, if there is one, be screened with evergreen plantings behind it, since it might be visible from the highway and from adjoining development, which we don't know what it's going to be yet, and that there be a line of bushes all along that drive-through along the property line. So those are my recommended conditions that I thought would be appropriate to be recorded with the CUP.
Okay, thanks. All right, so Brian Kleinmeyer, the recommended motion that's on our paper, does that cover what you needed to cover or not?
If you want those, if the Planning Commission wants there to conditions of the conditional use permit to include the landscaping that's identified in Jason's memo and to include the directional signage that is in Kent's memo, then yes, that recommended motion would include that.
Okay. Do we have somebody who'd like to make that recommended motion?
I'll make the motion to recommend approval of the SIP and CUP documents to the Joint Plan Commission with the conditions that all staff comments are resolved to the satisfaction of the village engineer.
Okay, Chris Thomas has the motion. Do we have a second? Second by Brad Zeman. Any other comments or questions for Jeff Kramer while he's here? Okay, seeing none, I will call to question. Tracy, roll call vote, please.
Kristen Runge,
Yes.
Brian Wallace,
Yes.
Brad Zeman,
Yes.
Chris Zellner,
Yes.
Phil Willems,
Yes.
Chris Thomas.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Jeff.
Yep, thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.
All right, next we have discuss and take action on requests for amendment to the approved signage plan for Lamp House at 203 East Main Street. Kevin?
Yeah, just give me a second. I'm trying to bring it up. We're out of order here, so gotta scroll down to it. Or Tracy, unless you
I've
have-
added two of the applicants
have
to
it?
our meeting. Wish to speak? I do. I have the revised. I will share my screen.
Oh, great, thanks.
Can you see it?
Yeah, that's great. So as part of the approval of this building, they had a sign package that limited the amount of signage that was going to be allowed on this particular building. And it really allocated then X amount of signage to each portion of the building. What they're asking for really in just this signage package is to exceed what was allocated for this particular building. So then going forward, they would need an exception then for going over and above what was in the packet. I think we're supportive of the signage, and I think they've made a clear indication because of the change in the commercial that there is more demand in terms of signage and more demands on commercial tenants that want to be seen because there's fewer of them. There's more competition in terms of providing good commercial space, and we need to be more accommodating is what I can tell you at a staff level. So with that, I would I don't know if the applicant is willing to talk about, or if there's anybody else on here, Tracy, that wants to talk.
I will welcome Dan Yoder. He put his finger up, so I think he wants to speak. Is that accurate?
That is correct, sir.
Go ahead.
Dan Yoder with Sign Art Studio. I just wanted to kind of speak on the signage types and why we arrived at where we did here. This is an end cap tenant. We looked at the awning signage, and I think, you know, once we saw it in real life, we kind of realized that it wouldn't quite work for this particular tenant. Here you can see it. The pitch is prohibitive of mounting a logo on the top of it. Just not going to be seen quite as well as we had initially hoped. And the potential tenant has expressed the desire for, you know, a nice push through acrylic illuminated sign, which is what we are really proposing that does deviate. Yep, right here, that deviates from what our initial sign package included. And then on page 3 is the does meet the original sign package as we had it specified. I just wanted to speak on that and I guess answer any technical questions as they may arise. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that from Hubdy or anyone else that would like to speak?
There was a gentleman from Hubdy that was on earlier, but I do see that he dropped off.
Okay.
But he did submit a favorable email prior to the meeting.
Got it. That would have been Vic Vela Cruz.
Correct.
I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but hopefully I didn't murder that. Okay. Plan Commission members, questions, comments? Raise your hand, please. Otherwise, I'll speak, I guess. When we originally did the building with this, Jason, we talked about signage like this and we kind of went away from that. Am I correct with my memory on that?
That was a question to me.
Yes.
I honestly, I don't recall there being discussion about or kind of dissent against signage of this character. It simply, to my recollection, simply wasn't proposed in the package. So it's new, but I don't recall that we made a decision or had, in my own memory, discussion to say we don't want this.
Ed, were you involved with that? I see you're still here. So were you involved with that? I feel like there was something that we had a discussion about signage for each business as we went down the way and what that would mean or how that would look like.
I think, this is Ed. I think what we had done is, and I think Dan stated it correctly, we had basically, or Dan's firm had basically scripted an allocation that met the downtown standards, because the specific tenants weren't identified at the time.
Okay, so when we go down this road with this client, any other clients, we're pretty much going to be having the same similar look then, or how's that going to work?
Vic is off the phone or off the Zoom. I'm assuming they're still going to want to have some kind of strong personal identity. I don't recall seeing anything that was like these three rectangular signs. I remember seeing more horizontal banding, but I don't recall any specifics.
I mean, it's exciting that we have businesses coming in here. Don't get me wrong. I'm trying to make sure we don't. I feel like we're making an amendment with the first one, it seems like almost. That's the only concern I had. If we had something already established and now we're already going off that. Brian, you got 4 fingers up. Jason, you have 5. You get to win. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I won. Just I guess a few comments on several topics there. And again, maybe someone else remembers the conversation differently, but as I recall the process, we had a lot of conversation about the projecting sign on the front of the building, in terms of allowing it to be larger and higher on the building than the code allowed. And the rest of the wall signage, which is what we're talking about here, as proposed in the package, was within the 150 square feet that the ordinance allows. And so there wasn't an exception sought to allow for more than that. And what was proposed fit within that. And what the effect of adding an additional sign type here, from my perspective, isn't detracting from the appearance of the building. I think that for basically a block-sized building of this, like this, with signage on 3 sides, the 150 square feet is pretty modest. Going above that in this fashion doesn't especially concern me, but it does require another exception to the ordinance. And one of the things I didn't make clear in my memo is that the form of that exception is a conditional use permit. So unfortunately, I don't think we're in a position to actually be able to improve the exception tonight, because it has to come in the form of a conditional use permit. A couple other things I'd like to point out. The sign package, as originally approved, allowed for this type of, the type D signs. If we could go to my memo in the package, please, where I kind of compare on the east side of the building what was proposed in the original package to what is requested at this time. What was approved in the sign package originally was 27-inch tall signs and of varying widths, and so that detail is what was approved. And if as you see on this page, the top image there shows what a 27-inch high sign looks like. Across the rest of the building, there was actually a variety of sizes or heights of those type D signs, where some of them were the full 27 inches and others were less. And so the example shown here for this is, so the second one down is the location of what would be the new sign is actually less than 27 inches. I don't know exactly what it is. I think it's less than 20, probably 21 inches. I don't think that in particular is an impediment to allowing. I think staff could have approved the sign as shown in the third image, which is the full 27 inches, larger than the illustration, but consistent with the detail in the package. But even if this were the only sign, and we weren't even talking about the new sign type down in the first floor elevation, I would raise a concern here that this sign is both taller and wider in this location than illustrated in the sign package. And I would worry that it was taking from the budget of signage still available then for the other tenants. When we add in the proposed new sign type, which is the larger first floor elevation sign, that definitely takes away, uses up the budget for the available wall signage. And so it was my suggestion that at the time of approving this, that the exception expand that budget of signage up to 200 square feet from 150. I think it could be specified to the concern that, are we going to be seeing the same thing elsewhere, that perhaps this is the only location? Or if the applicant wants to request another location, now I think would be a good time to say, okay, maybe we have another, corner unit that should have it. I don't know if that's the case, but that could be suggested. The last thing I want to point out is part of the rationale here is that the awning signage was deemed not really effective. The image, the photo shown is taken from the sidewalk. I'm not sure if that's a fair portrayal of whether or not the signage on the top surface of the awning would be effective as seen from the street. This is really showing you what's effective or not from the sidewalk, or at least from the curb. But on the other hand, I don't really have a problem with really thought, but we don't think it's going to. We want the smaller signage on the vertical face of the awning. I would say that's, but I would also say, as noted in my memo, that I would see the awnings across the building be one format or the other, and not a jumble of both. And so if the message here is that the type of signage up on the face on the top of the awning isn't going to work, that be revised to have this be the norm instead of that preference and my recommendation. So dumped a lot on you there, but wanted to share everything that I had in reaction to this.
All right, thanks, Jason. Brian, you had your 4 fingers up for a question before this, so you still have that question or comment?
No, I think Jason hit on everything, and so no, I don't have anything to add.
Brad Zeman, you had your hand up.
Hit your point as well, Chris. We did talk about this in length, and going over the signage. Noticed what I think the new Edward Jones sign that was put up on the building as well is really flat and plain, very, very generic compared to everything else in that building. And I think we kind of slipped a little bit. Want to make sure we make the right decisions and don't utilize all the sign space for one retail tenant that maybe could use it for another space. The last thing we want to do is have dark space here on Main Street. So I want to make sure we move the right decision here moving forward. Really kind of contemplate this decision.
Okay. Others, comments?
Chris, I do know that.
This is Kristen.
Oh, go ahead, Kristen.
Oh,
go ahead, Kristen.
Okay. So yeah, this is, thank you. Yeah, I had a concern that this is, first of all, it's a lot of sign Second, if we're starting to exceed or we anticipate exceeding the sign budget, one of the things I would be concerned about is that we're starting a sign race to a certain extent that, there will be the urge, understandably, by other businesses that want to market their business to have a slightly, bigger sign than they might be allowed, just simply for the purposes of advertising the business, which is a legitimate reason. But if we're starting to skirt those rules all the time, then I think we're going to have a lot more sign downtown than we wanted for the look of downtown. And that's all.
Okay, thanks, Kristen. Ed, you put your finger up. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to refresh one other thing is when the initial concepts were developed and the signage band was trying to accommodate the downtown commercial square footage. And when you look at a lot of the adjacent businesses and across the street, whether they're a multi-storefront run or individual, there is some consistency in terms of a pedestrian scale. So I think that was one of the original intents, was to keep everything more at a pedestrian scale and not necessarily respond to vehicular traffic coming through town.
Okay. Brian Wallace, any comments?
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of echo some of that stuff that's already been talked about, but when we approved this sign plans back when this building first went into operation, I should say, the lamp house sign that was proposed and approved, from my recollection, was going to be used throughout for all of the businesses and stuff there, that same style. And it seems like, I think to Brad's comment, is the one that did get put up is similar in nature, but not quite to, from what I perceive to be the same quality. And I think I look at the sign here that's proposed for Waunakee Family Dentistry, and again, it's similar. I just like to make sure that we're following that same look that the lamp house signs themselves had. And I would say that we stay in that same pattern, trying to make them uniform throughout the building. I think that gives it a nice look, and I understand where the customer's coming from as far as trying to promote their business, but I think consistency along the building facade would be more beneficial.
Chris Thomas, any comments?
No comments. They've already been addressed.
Okay, so Dan, I think your hand went up faster than Kevin, so I'm going to give it to you. Go ahead.
I just wanted to address a couple things. One, Jason had mentioned a sizing discrepancy. We did email Tracy an update on that. So that south-facing sign has been reduced in size, not to go beyond the soldier course of the brick. So that has already been taken care of. We emailed that over. In terms of that particular sign and the design, it is exactly what we had initially included in the sign package. The detailing is identical. We updated the stain of the wood to match the logo color. Outside of that, it meets every single detail that we had initially called out for this sign package. In terms of, I guess I'd like to have a better understanding of, in terms of exceeding sign size, because if we remove where they could have had a logo on the top of the awning and we replace that with this particular wall sign that we're proposing along the main frontage there, how, I guess, and Jason, maybe you can help me with that. How does that make us or bring us into a situation where we're exceeding the sign size, the allotment, if you will? You know, if you're doing a big logo on the awning, all of a sudden that's going away, and we're proposing just this additional sign type for this end cap tenant, how that affects the overall signage allotment.
Yeah, I think the ordinance is set up such that the wall signage is a category unto itself with its own budget, separate from the awnings.
And that is, so then is this ordinance related or specific to our sign package, and how do the two jive with each other, and what supersedes each other, and what do we refer to and what do we don't?
So the sign package is approved is consistent with the ordinance, except to the extent that it's not, which, and it wasn't regarding that projecting sign. And so the village approved a conditional use permit to allow that exception. And if we're talking about another exception, then the revision to the sign package needs to be approved by conditional use permit.
Okay.
Phil, I didn't hear from you. I apologize. Go ahead, Phil. If you have any comments.
I don't have any comments at this time. Was just reading this. I agree that the sign should be uniform. I like the lamp house sign. I like the idea that all the tenant signage is in the same shape, et cetera, and color. It gives it a real classy look. And I think that each business should be allowed to have signage that commiserate with their size of their frontage or a certain percent.
Okay, Kevin, you had your hand up as well.
I've heard from a couple different commissioners, and I think Dan's got a pretty good explanation of things, and Jason's and I had contemplated, you know, that if you go to the cover page, that we were not going to take action tonight. But I think, Dan, it'd be helpful to resubmit the entire package with the allotments, because I don't think it's real clear. You know, Jason saying that, you know, are we taking off the awning, adding it to the wall? We should just update the entire package for it going forward. And I think that'll answer the question. All right, we got this much allotment left for this. And if you can't, I think you're going to need to exceed what would be allowed by the ordinance. But then the conditional use allows the grant that exception to do that.
Okay. So, well, I guess what do we so resubmit the whole sign package for, I guess, clarification on size allotments, or Kevin, I'm trying to understand what our action is from here beyond what we're here for today.
Yeah, I think it's hard for our plan commission to take action on this allotment if they don't know how it's going to affect, if it's going to have an impact on not having so much allotment for the other buildings going forward. So what I'm asking, can you put together the updated sign package that gives this allotment what they're seeking for, and then also budget enough so that all the other buildings in there would have adequate signing, so you're not having to come back and make an adjustment for them as well.
Yeah, I mean,
Vic from Hupty with his hand up.
Yeah, this is Vic Villacrez with Hubdy Properties. I apologize, I missed the first part of the discussion, but I wanted to bring some material information to the sign budget as for these. I think they're type, whatever type they are, but you know, we did recently assemble 2 of the units into one. And you know, we created one less rentable bay per se in the building. So I don't know if that, you know, is something that is relevant right now, but you know, there would be, you know, the likelihood there would be one less business that would be looking for signage.
So I'll just pipe in just for a second. And Dan, I'm sorry if maybe you're appearing that we're being difficult on you. I think the important thing for your building that we're talking about here is that there's consistency as you're coming down the road, that we don't have different sign spots for others, and I just don't think that would be a good look. And I think most of the plan commissioners would agree. Maybe I'm wrong, but staying consistent across the way here, yet having the uniqueness for each of the tenants, you know, with their colors and you know, what they would be able to do. So I don't know if I'm saying that correct, Kevin, but or Jason, but that if you're talking about awnings, are we going to have things on awnings and then we're not going to have things on awnings for businesses? I don't think we want to be inconsistent with that. That's just a take from me. I don't. but I also understand that you're trying to rent to a tenant, Vic, and they probably have certain things they want within the building for their own purposes. So from an accommodation standpoint, we want to be able to accommodate, but we also need to have some consistency there with what we put out there.
Well, I'm gonna go back to Jason. I mean, Jason, I tried to give my take on it, and I just need to understand if you're agreeing, or do we need more information, or do you have enough to make a recommendation tonight? Brian, he had to sign off tonight, but he was pretty clear to me that he didn't think we would be in a position to take action tonight.
So I guess a couple of things to note. The change to clarify that the sign on the type D sign on the east end of the building is actually going to be the same size as it shows up in the existing package, which is, I think, am I right, Dan, that that's 21 inches tall?
Yep.
Means that sign isn't pulling from that signage budget more than in the original package. And I guess if there's one fewer tenant spaces than in the original proposed package, that means there's a little more budget to spare. I think there's still, I don't have the numbers rerun here in front of me, but I think it's possible that it works out with staying within the 150 square feet. The applicant did not explicitly ask for a conditional use permit or ask to go above the 150 square feet. I raised the flag that I think this is sending us in that direction, and at some point they're going to come to the village for sign approval, and they will have met the budget and be unable to put up a sign for a new tenant. It's looking like that's less likely to be the case now, though I guess I prefer to be a little more confident about that. If we're only talking tonight about approving a new sign type without going over the 150 square feet, without making that allowance or that exception, I think it's something you can do tonight, and we don't have to reschedule and go for a conditional use permit. I would say that the proposed change to the awning signage, and I think they really only talking about this unit, but to me that helps address the concern that there's too much signage. So if eliminating the larger signage on the top of the awning and having a more modest amount just on the front edge of the awning, I think that's there's some amount of balancing out there. The only reservation I have then is, where is that leaving us with the other awning signage? And would either Dan or Vic like to comment on intentions for the rest of the building with regard to the rest of the awnings?
Yeah, I can address that, Jason. I appreciate, that overwhelming, signable, potential area. But if you look, and what we feel is that that's really not an effective signable, space to put a sign on. The pitch it's too shallow, and it's not our first choice of signage on that, on that top part. So I think it's safe to say that we're not, we like the signage, the package, and the type D signs, but allowing for some branding and some flavor of the tenant itself, without going too extreme, of course. But that's kind of where I don't know if Dan, you want to address that. We did talk a little bit about that today.
Yeah, I think some of this too, in our experience, we put together what looks good on paper. We see it as the building grows and comes together, and as the tenants come in, or in this case Vic's having lease negotiations with different types of tenants, you understand there's times when we kind of zig and zag based on what the desires are. I think that in terms of branding and colorization, you know, the sign type, the additional sign type that we're proposing is a high-end type of sign. You know, this is not a cheap cabinet style sign. These are dimensional push-through, internally illuminated letters. As Vic stated, this is an end cap tenant. And this is, you know, taking up 2 spaces as opposed to the single one. And so I think at times, you know, we need to reassess what the original sign plan was. And that's why we're here today. And it was my understanding that we were submitting this based on the fact that we were introducing possibly an additional sign type. I was not aware that we were asking for, and I think Jason has addressed this now, exceeding a sign allotment because we were going to be pulling away from a larger sign on the awning, and with them taking 2 spaces versus 1. So that's kind of where we stand, or where I, you know, my understanding of the submittal and why we're here today. I don't know, does that give any more further clarification on why we're here? You know, this is just kind of addressing a need as it comes up. And like Vic said, those awnings, whether you're in a car, you're standing on the street or across the street, a logo on top, you know, as they are in real life, is going to not really be a useful or purposeful sign in any way. And we would be with omitting that awning sign altogether for this particular app, you know, for this particular tenant.
Kristen, I think we're in a position to take action tonight. I think we need assurance from Dan or Vic that that you're not going to have to exceed, you know, what was originally approved in the sign package, and that's in the 150 square feet. And if it is something you need to exceed, you know, you can resubmit certainly at a later date and take this off the table. But if what you're indicating is that you're able to stay within that allotment that was set aside as part of the sign package that was approved by the Plan Commission, which is 150 square feet, I think our Plan Commission's in a position to take action tonight.
To the commission, one thing I wanted to clarify, and Dan, you know, this particular applicant is not taking 2 spots. It's another one that we have a signed contract with that has assembled 2 different ones. So, just for clarification.
So does that give you any pause or concern regardless of the total amount, Vic, then, or no?
No, it does not at all.
Okay.
Yep.
I mean, I like the sign. I think I like the look of the signs that they've proposed. I think it matches with what they were doing with Lamp House. I think that the back lighting is good. It's going to match what's there right now. So I'm going to make Kevin, is it all right to make the motion to approve this? You have anything in there? Okay, so I'm going to make the motion to approve the signage as presented. Do we have a second? Second from Chris Thomas. Any other comments? Jason, hand up.
I would just request a condition that the applicant provide a revised sign package that clarifies that this is a new package for the whole building with this new sign type in this one location, because I think that's the intent.
Yep. I'll add that to my motion. Chris, is that okay with you on your second? Okay.
And I would further ask you to consider whether you want to say, ask for or have a revision regarding those awnings. It sounds like the applicant doesn't intend to do printing on the tops of the awnings and to do printing just on the fronts, and to clarify that in the sign package, I think would be desirable.
I think and appropriate. So, okay, I'll add that as well. Chris, are you good with that? Okay. Any other comments from any commission members? Okay. Tracy, roll call vote, please.
Bill Willems,
Yes.
Chris Thomas,
Yes.
Chris Zellner,
Yes.
Brian Wallace,
No.
Brad Zeman,
Yes.
Kristen Runge.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you
for being here tonight. Appreciate it. Okay. So then we're going on to number 4, discuss and take action on proposed additional parking for West Briar condominiums at 702 West Main Street.
Great. Tracy, can you bring up that site plan that shows the 8 additional parking stalls? And I'll walk you through this pretty quickly. I don't think this is a very complicated submittal. Is that they've asked for 8 additional parking stalls as part of this development. And actually, there's a couple things that we wanted to see as part of this is that some of these stalls were deeper to allow for like a trailer, but that's not allowed by ordinance. So that's been revised. And so the deepness of the lots would now conform to the ordinance. We wanted something showing that the trees are removed. Well, we've been, in fact, now talked to the applicant. The trees are already gone. They've been gone. And the grading plan is pretty obvious. I had Kent take a look at it just to confirm that grading works. And then also that if there's any lighting that he wants to add out here, that we would approve that to be full cutoff, and that he'll need to add some landscaping, which he's proposing to verify that it meets our Pints requirement. So with that, village staff is recommending approval of these additional 8 stalls.
Commission members, questions? Please raise your hand. Okay, Kristen, did you have any questions?
No questions for me, thanks.
Brian Wallace, go ahead.
Yeah, this looks like it changed a little bit from the information in the packet. Don't really have a question. I guess if you want, I can make a motion to approve as recommended by staff.
Okay, motion by Brian Wallace. Do we have a second? Second by Chris Thomas.
Second.
Sorry, Kristen, too slow on that one. Second by Chris Thomas. Any other comments, questions? All right. Roll call vote, please, Tracy.
Brad Zeman,
Yes.
Kristen Runge,
Yes.
Chris Thomas,
Yes.
Brian Wallace,
Yes.
Chris Zellner,
Yes.
Phil Willems.
Yes.
Motion carried.
I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, but Gerardo, were you here tonight for this topic?
I am. Thank you, guys. I appreciate your help and support.
Okay, he came on screen. I saw you come on. I didn't want to not give you an opportunity to speak if you wanted to, so thank you very much. Okay, have a great night.
You guys have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, next we have discuss and take action on proposed certified survey map for entrance feature for Heritage Hills subdivision at the corner of Division and Main Street.
Yeah, this is something you've taken a look at in the past. It's for the entrance monument or the entrance feature into Heritage Hills. This document is just going to separate out their monument or their feature away from the public owned land. So it'll be on the HOA property and they'll be responsible for maintaining it. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the certified survey map to the village board.
Okay, questions from plan commissioners?
Yeah, so Kevin, you said HOA, so does the development have or will have an HOA that's going to be tasked with maintaining that, or will that at some point fall back on the village?
No, they will. They'll have an HOA and they'll be responsible for maintaining it. They have one established.
Any others with questions? Kristen, do you have any questions?
Nope.
Thank you.
Is this something we discussed before? This rings a bell.
It is. We shown that that entrance feature before, that was with the the retaining wall and the Heritage Hills and the lighting that went along with it, that really recognizes the entrance point into their into their neighborhood.
Chris Ellers, I saw that you're out there. Did you want to have any comments about this?
No, we're doing this one piece at a time, where we wanted to get the monument set, which we've done and identified the location, and now we're going to build our decorative fence that extends off it and really establishes a perimeter around the project. It probably won't be installed until the spring, but now that we've identified where that fence is going to go, we section it off so that the HOA will maintain that, and it's not a burden to the village at all.
Okay. Well, everybody's been easy on signage tonight and various things, so we'll see how this one goes, I guess. All right. Any other questions or comments from commission members? Okay, I'm happy with it as well. I'm going to make the recommended approval of the CSM to the village board.
And I will second that.
Second by Phil Willems. Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, I will ask Tracy to do our roll call vote. Thank you, Chris Ellers.
Chris Thomas,
Yes.
Kristen Runge,
Yes.
Brian Wallace,
Yes.
Brad Zeman,
Yes.
Phil Willems,
Yes.
Chris Zellner.
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, thank you, everybody. And number 6, discuss and take action on a request for parking lot expansion for Buck and Honey's 1370 Waterwheel Drive. Kevin?
Yeah, I think most of you are aware that Buck and Honey's is the new owner of what was formerly known as the Boston's Pizza. They're proposing to add 40 parking stalls, which would be a separate parking lot. Kent did have a number of technical issues, so that's where the conditional approval is satisfied. But I didn't see anything in there that they can't overcome. Really has to do with providing some access point to some future connection if we ever extend Simon Crestway, some stormwater improvements, that'd be a part of it. And then there were some utility improvements that are necessary in order to make this happen. But overall, staff is content. And I think we've all noticed that even under Boston's Pizza, there was parking issues in and around that neighborhood that hopefully this will solve.
Yeah, I would just comment that the parking issue you're referring to, we didn't really have the parking issue when Quick Trip wasn't there. Since that road was just available that people could park on it, that's road that goes in between right now to get down there. That's really not a good option anymore for us to have any parking. So I think it's imperative that we have additional parking, which is what they're adding here. So those are my comments with regards to this. Any other comments from any other board or commission members? Sorry, Brian Wallace.
Not to get way out in the future, but you mentioned Simon Crestway and if there was ever an extension there, Kevin, how does this align with right away or proposed future right away?
There's not right away. There is an outlot. I think we've always felt that this would be the edge of the dividing line between Waunakee and Westport. But we didn't completely close that door. So if there is something that happens in the future, that roadway, could be extended.
Okay, all right, thank you. Well, with that, because you're showing on drainage or is it bioretention or whatever it is there off the end of that. So if something were to be done in the future, is that something that would change? I mean,
It's not in my career. It's probably 20 plus years now before that something is going to move forward with that additional land. We got an agreement with Westport. We're not going to grow that direction. So that agreement is in place for at least another 10 plus years.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Kristen Runge, did you?
I did have a question about the bioswale. Is there going to be, like looking at the drawing that they've submitted, is the bioswale going to remain there, or is it going to be just like all asphalt, or will there be any green plantings within the parking lot?
Matt, you want to answer that?
Sure, I can speak to that. So we had originally planned on putting a bioswale in that location. We have since the submittal and the plans you're looking at, done some soil test pits, and we found out that area is actually not conducive to infiltration, just due to some of the existing constraints that are out there with groundwater. And so we're not actually planning to do a bioretention basin there right now, but we will meet all of the stormwater requirements for the park. Regarding the landscaping, we did submit a landscape plan that shows trees on the, right now we're on the south and the north side of the parking lot. We will be adding more trees to that. One of the staff comments was to add additional plantings to make sure we're satisfying the point requirements. And so we will do that as part of our final submittal and make sure that's acceptable acceptable to staff.
Okay, thank you.
So on that, you show a curb cut there, so I'm assuming that won't necessarily be there anymore off the end of that lot.
No, we'd like to keep, so right now it's a curb cut for drainage. We will have water flowing to the east. We do want to have what we call kind of a ribbon curb there just for snow plowing. There's going to be two specific locations at the end of the drive lanes. So we've got a good spot to put snow, but then we'll also have curb cuts there for drainage. That whole lot is going to flow to the east. That's the current drainage pattern.
Chris Thomas, anything?
Does this change the requirement for the number of handicap spots that are needed?
We did not. Let me take a look here. I believe the counts we had, we were at. I think it was 4 spaces, and we currently have 4 spaces. But that's something we'll work with staff on. Obviously, we're going to comply with all ADA requirements, and if another stall is needed, we would propose that near the entrance of the building. We wouldn't put it back here on this expansion.
Okay, Brad Zeman, any questions or comments? No, okay.
No.
Phil, anything?
Nothing.
So one comment that I have, and you go by Matt or Matthew, I want to make sure I don't, is it Matt?
It's Matt, yeah.
Perfect. Brian's question originally about that road and whether it should be going through. Do we see any issues with the fact that Quick Trip is the only exit spot for folks out of this restaurant? If it's busy in that zone, are we concerned about the volume of traffic that's going to come? This is similar to the same question I had at the very beginning with the Esri project over by McDonald's. Are we concerned about the amount of traffic that could be coming out of there? Between Quick Trip traffic coming in, I just feel there's going to be a lot of volume right there within that road.
Sure, and I think, so we did not do a traffic study based on just adding the parking lot, because you're going to have trips coming to this destination from a variety of different locations. The neighborhoods obviously to the east are going to be coming in, and you may have trips, coming in from Waterwheel, either east or west, or people even coming, from the north. We didn't see it as an issue just because there's a lot of different destinations coming here. It's not like everyone's going to be coming from Q, and then turning in to the site or taking off from the site and hanging a left. So, I mean, we anticipate the use and the trips generated are going to be very similar to what you saw previously with Boston's there. So,
well, I'm only asking that because you're talking, how many additional stalls are we adding?
We're adding 40 additional stalls, and really that's to, accommodate the requests from Buck and Honey's for some additional stalls. But I think what we also did in working with the Tierneys was lay out what we think is an efficient use of that additional space. The intent here is that this lot may be used for a future use, and parking would be shared with the future use that could happen on the north side of this parcel.
So my comment is really, I think that the capacity of the restaurant, if the restaurant's at capacity, will all those spots be filled?
I don't know for sure. Right now, what we're looking at is 68 parking stalls currently for an occupancy of 200, and I think it's 20 is the max occupancy for the building. So, I mean, if you park it at 1 parking stall per 3 occupants in the building, you're looking at 75 stalls total that we need, and we're providing 108. So I think this is going to address, the peak parking concerns that have happened at this restaurant. And I don't think it's going to be an issue where you'll have overflow to the north.
I guess my question, maybe I'm not doing a good job with it.
Sorry.
I'm taking into effect peak restaurant, which may coincide with some peak times at Quick Trip, which has a car wash right across from that same road that people are going to be exiting. So there's people going, there's just a lot of traffic movement in a very tiny area there. And I'm wondering, do we not need that release road on the backside? Is all I'm saying. So people could come into the parking lot in a different direction. And I know if that's maybe not in the plan right now, but I think that probably is it's gonna show that we probably do need it. That's what I'm getting at.
We
Sure, and I
did,
can't- yeah.
Matt, maybe I could answer that a little bit. And Kristen, we did try to address that they didn't have to build it now, but they had to show how a future connection to the east of any potential Simon Crestway extended could occur. So that, that would be an option if that roadway is extended. So depending on what happens to that property that's just north of here, there may be some pressure to extend that Simon Crestway at least down to the edge of the parking lot and provide some relief. But I think, like Matt said, this parking lot is being seen as a flex parking lot that not only serves Buck and Honey's, but then potentially serves a development to the north. And so I think you're going to get another kick at the cat when in terms of when that development of that lot that's north of this parking lot comes forward.
Okay, like I said, I'm just trying to take into account how much traffic is gonna be on that road, and that's not a big road going in between there.
It's 32 feet. So I mean, it does meet our standard for a roadway size.
I understand that. I'm just saying the amount, I work right by there and I see the volume going into Quick Trip, and I know that that's gonna be an issue within the car wash and Quick Trip. The fact that they're on the opposite sides of the street, people use gas, then they go across, we're gonna have a lot of traffic moving in one spot. That's all I'm saying. So if we can do something in the future, fine. But as I said right off the bat, I'm all for it. I think they do need the additional parking just based on past with Boston's. So I just like to make sure that we don't put a bottleneck situation or a traffic accident situation into play there. So, okay, any other comments from anyone else? Or we'd look for a motion.
Motion to approve?
Motion by Brad Zeman. Do we have a second? Second by Brian Wallace. Any other comments or questions?
And this is a recommendation to the Joint Plan Commission, who will take action tomorrow night.
That's correct. Okay, and seeing no other questions or comments, Kristen, I should have asked you, sorry. Kristen, go ahead if you have any questions, comments.
No questions.
Okay, good deal. Tracy, roll call vote, please.
Kristen Runge,
Yes.
Brad Zeman,
Yes.
Chris Thomas,
Yes.
Brian Wallace,
Yes.
Chris Zellner,
Yes.
Phil Willems.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, Waunakee Westport Joint Plan Commission updates. I think we're good to go there, everybody. Yes, Kevin?
Yeah, we're good. We talked about all the items.
Yep, I think we're good on that. So we need one more motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Brad said it with more of zest, so I'm gonna give it to him, and I'm gonna give Phil a second, if that's okay with you, Phil? Okay, so second from Phil. Tracy, roll call vote, please.
Chris Zellner,
Yes.
Chris Thomas,
Yes.
Brad Zeman,
Yep.
Phil Willems,
Yes.
Kristen Runge,
Yes.
Brian Wallace.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you, everyone. Have a safe, happy holiday
Happy
season.
holidays.
We'll see everybody in January.
Good night, Gracie.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Brad.
Right on.
Good night.